This is almost certainly going to be an older piece of news, so I figured I would, talk about it now, since it's never too late to talk about something big that happens in the gaming industry. Um, Electronic Arts has now officially been bought by the Saudi government, and that's absolutely bloody insane. They sold them for about a ton of money. At $55 billion, which, let's be completely honest with ourselves here, there's no way in hell EA is worth $55 billion. There's no way in hell. So how is it that the Saudi government were able to actually pay for EA through these means? It's because a decent amount of that money is actually going to be EA in debt to the bank JP Morgan. So let's actually look through the details. So Electronic Arts, the maker of video games like Madden NFL, Battlefield, and The Sims, is being acquired by an investor group including Saudi Arabia's Sovereign Wealth Fund in the largest private equity funded buyout in history. So the investors are in fact a firm managed by Jared Kushner and the private equity firm Silver Lake Partners, valued at a deal of $55 billion. EA stockholders will receive $210 per share. The deal far exceeds $32 billion for the price tag to take the Texas utility TXC private in 2007, which is a leverage record buyout. So basically the idea is that EA is being bought out currently in order to go private. Now, if EA is to go private, it means they don't need to deal with their shareholders anymore. And that's all well and good, because that's all part of the stock exchange. However, now EA is instead going to be in debt to JP Morgan and is going to owe Saudi Arabia a ton of money, specifically the PIF. I think it's a private investment fund or something along those lines, which was the largest insider's stakeholder in EA and is rolling over its 9.9% investment in the company. So what is effectively going to happen here is that EA is going to have to make a ton of money to make up for the debt that they have to JP Morgan, in addition to making the Saudi Arabia PIF fund or private investment fund happy. And so the problem then becomes, how is EA going to actually make that money? Because EA hasn't really been known for making money all that well. Basically, what's probably going to end up happening, and this is what I've read from a few financial analysts on basically the internet here, specifically the gaming analysts that I generally tend to read up on, have said that basically what's going to happen is severe cost cutting. Lots of people are going to lose their jobs, tons of people are going to get fired, and most likely EA is also going to get even more aggressive with their microtransactions. They're going to try and make more money through microtransactions than they ever have before. And keeping in mind, this is EA we're talking about, and obviously they do have games like Madden, like FIFA, well, EA Sports FC now, and other sports games under their belt like NHL. And of course, many of these games, I don't know about NHL at least, have a fantasy team element to it. So like you've got FIFA Ultimate Team, which I suppose is now EA Sports Ultimate Team. You've got Madden Ultimate Team. So now with all of these Ultimate Teams, basically they're all about buying tons and tons of like currency through real money, through microtransactions, and using them to basically rip open packs of players to create their team. And of course, you're never going to be competitive unless you pay tons and tons of money to get some of the best rated players of all time working together with the best possible outcomes. And of course, when you look at something like The Sims, for example, sure, The Sims 4 did go free to play not long ago, maybe a couple years ago, I want to say. It's still worth mentioning that they have tons and tons of DLC that they will continue to release ever moving forward. So there's a lot going on that perspective as well. pumping games up with tons and tons of DLC. On top of that, making games way more monetized, and on top of that, doubling down or tripling down sometimes on that monetization to make things worse for us as players in an attempt to try and make tons and tons of more money, which will ultimately, hopefully, from their perspective, work out that they make tons of money and basically are able to keep everyone happy. Both EA, JP Morgan, and also the PIF. But looking at this, so here's a quote from Andrew Maruk of James Raymond, which is don't know who he is, but basically he says the Saudi PIF is a very active player in the video games market since 2022, taking minority stakes in the most scaled public video game publishers and also outright purchases from companies like ESL, Faceit, and Scopely, he wrote. The PIF has made its intentions to scale its gaming arm, Savvy Games Group, clear, and the EA deal would represent the biggest such move to date by some distance. Now, worth keeping in mind that Saudi Arabia is trying to make itself look good, despite a lot of really, really bad things that they've done, include hack a man up into pieces, shove him into a bag, basically, a piece of luggage, if you will. Let me put it this way. I'm surprised that you can fit a fully grown man in a bag, but of course, the only way to do that is to hack him up into pieces. But anyway, that's the way that the Saudis do, as Sacha Baron Cohen said in the sequel to Borat. Anyway, I can't remember the full name. It's really, really long. But again, Borat, very funny movie, mind you. Yeah, so hack him up like the Saudis do, as he says. But PIF is also a minority stakeholder in Nintendo. And yeah, they, in fact, actually referring to Savvy Games Group in particular, it's worth keeping in mind that Embracer actually completely went under a lot and ended up changing their names and selling lots of companies, closing down a lot of developers, and in fact cancelling a lot of games because of a $2 billion deal with Savvy Games Group going completely under, and as a result negatively affecting Embracer Group by some immense margin. So unfortunately their spending spree was left in the dust, among other things. But of course, the deal needed approval from the National Security Regulators of the Committee of the Foreign Investment, given that the Saudis are involved, but plenty of reasons to expect it to go through. And this is the funny thing. A lot of companies earn money off of the concept of capitalism, basically. But the thing is that what's really insane here is that Saudi Arabia has so much money that it's doing more capitalism than companies doing capitalism, to the point where the people who have more money basically have more power. And that's not a good way of looking at things from that perspective, because it means you can buy anything, including any company that exists on the planet. And that's where, like, Saudi Arabia has been buying tons and tons of stuff. And they've been making so much money through their oil that it's just not even funny. But yeah. And they've also been doing stuff like sports washing. So buying, sports people, buying entire sports leagues. Or if they couldn't buy the sports league, making their own version of the sports league and just making Saudi Arabia look good. And in fact, what's happening with comedians as well, the exact same idea of like giving comedians a absolutely massive bag, but it also came out that those comedians could not talk ill of the country, the leadership of the country, and just other stuff like that. Yeah, but by going private, EA will be able to retool operations without worrying about market reactions. Although its video games still have a fervent following, EA's annual revenue have been stagnant for the past 3 fiscal years, hovering around $7.4 to $7.6 billion, which is interesting to see. And of course, Mike Hickey of the Benchmark Company thinks that the proposed deal of $210 per share offer price might be falling short of EA's intrinsic value. Wait, so he's saying that EA is worth more? Interesting. But basically here, with Battlefield 6 about to launch in a pipeline that could add more than $2 billion in incremental bookings by financial year 28, the true earning power of EA is only beginning to emerge, he wrote. The board's decision to recommend a sale at $210 per share suggests a prioritization of near-term certainty and legacy over maximizing long-term shareholder value. So basically, making money in the short term, not so much looking at things from a holistic point of view, which is very interesting to see. Nick McKay of Freedom Capital Markets says that the financial backing and resources of the investor consortium should enable EA to increase its focus on long-term growth opportunities that may have been viewed as too risky or expensive as a public company. Fingers crossed that that's the case, but also who knows what's going to happen moving forward from this point. Like I said, we won't know until time passes and things actually end up happening, that dominoes start falling and decisions start being made. EA shares rose 4.5% on Monday and jumping 50% on Friday, when reports of a possible takeover began to circulate. The deal is expected to close in the first quarter of fiscal year 2027, so I think that's April to June of 2026, if I remember correctly. It still needs approval from EA stakeholders. So while nothing is absolutely in stone, this is still a crazy and insane thing to look at from that perspective. And I know that using, AP, the Associated Press article for this is a bit more technical since it goes into the financials aspect of it a little bit much. But I feel like I also needed to cover it from a very, very base point of view. From what I'm aware, what I've heard, what I've seen. And basically, like I said, when it comes down to it, everyone is just guessing what's going to happen next, because nothing is for certain until the time comes and things end up happening. But until then, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the EA buyout. This is again one of the two biggest pieces of news, alongside the fact that Xbox Game Pass increased their prices, leading to a ton of negative press towards Xbox. So Xbox and EA both going down some pretty bad routes this past week. But I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say about this in the comments below. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe to the channel. I'm aiming for 500 subs by end of the year. With all that being said, I do upload every day, so I'll see you guys tomorrow.